Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, the BJP's ruling coalition and the Congress's India opposition bloc will go head-to-head tomorrow in a battle for the Lok Sabha Speaker's post, arguably one of the most important in a parliamentary democracy, and to be held for the first time in decades after the two failed to agree on a consensus candidate. This doesn't augur well for this forthcoming session of Parliament. The sense is that the opposition and the government could clash if they've not been able to reach a consensus on the name of a speaker. Then will there be consensus on critical issues coming up? Well, the Congress has nominated K. Suresh, an 8-time MP, against the Kota MP Om Birla. The opposition says the government never agreed to give them the Deputy Speaker's post. The government says that conditions cannot be preset. Next up on the program, the 17-year-old boy who was involved in the Porsche car accident that killed two techies in Pune last month has been ordered out of custody in an observation home by the Bombay High Court. The court says, and I quote, "We are bound by law, the aims and objectives of the Juvenile Justice Act, and must treat him as any child in conflict with law despite the seriousness of the crime." On the show tonight, protecting juveniles versus the need for justice in a crazy case where a teenager drove over two people, and there was a huge effort at a cover-up after that. And finally, after a 14-year fight for freedom, the transparency activist Julian Assange, who founded WikiLeaks, is out of a tiny prison cell in the United Kingdom as part of a deal with the United States, where he will admit to a single charge of being guilty in exchange for his freedom. The WikiLeaks dump of lakhs of documents revealed the bitter reality and the truth about the US wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We'll be looking at something which was entirely unexpected, the release of Julian Assange. He's been in custody or in jail or seeking refuge for 14 years, essentially not a free man. But first, our big story, the big debate this evening, the state of Parliament. Remember, it's day 2 of this new session of Parliament, and the battle, as it were, between the India Alliance and the government was on the choice of a consensus speaker. At the end, there was no consensus speaker. It's Om Birla versus Mr. K. Suresh, who has been nominated by the opposition. Joining us now to look at this, Dr. Syed Zafar Islam of the BJP, Dr. Ajay Kumar of the Congress, Tausif Ahmed Khan, a political analyst somewhat close to the Trinamool Congress, and Aarti Jairat, the senior journalist. Dr. Syed Zafar Islam, the opposition says that, look, if you have the post of speaker, then why not give the post of deputy speaker to the opposition? What was the problem with this?
Well, first of all, this election is for the speaker's post, and if you just see the parliamentary tradition, there is always consensus between the Treasury bench and the opposition bench. This could have been achieved here as well. But having said that, what we expect from them to be responsible opposition parties. They want to create friction in every single thing because they feel that that is the only way to run the parliament. But that's not the way to run the parliament. Parliament is run by consensus, and that consensus can be built when there is absolutely no headroom available for this kind of conflict or friction. You know that the Treasury bench has enough number. And I also must tell you that when the voting will happen, they will be terribly disappointed and they will stand exposed because the number they claim will not be, even those numbers will not be there with them. So having said that, tomorrow we expect that we will not only show our strength, we will also show that it was totally unwarranted on the part of the opposition parties to go for election because it was totally unwarranted. Having said that, when the deputy speaker election will take place, when that situation arises, we will discuss at that point in time, because right now...
No, but why the difficulty in discussing now, Dr. Islam? It seems to be a fairly reasonable sort of request. The government has the role of speaker. The deputy speaker's post should perhaps go to the opposition, which has considerable numbers. Why was it so difficult to accept this early on, in an effort to build consensus, which is what the Prime Minister, Mr. Rijuju, everybody else has said is the need of the hour and is the goal of the BJP?
No, I'm saying that I really want you to see some of the data which perhaps you must be having with you, that West Bengal, for instance, Tausif is there, West Bengal, who is in opposition, Bharatiya Janata Party, but do we have the deputy speaker's post? No. like in Kerala, like in Telangana, like in many other states. They have a speaker's post, they have the deputy speaker's post as well. So why they are trying to preach something where they have not practiced? It is very unfair on their part.
Okay.
And I really will stand corrected that this is not fair. They are unfair. What they have never practiced, they want us to practice. Because just because they have got 99 seats, Congress really want to impose their thoughts on us. We do not want to be succumb to their pressure. We
will let me just keep the strike,
but not at the cost of
rotating,
getting friction by them. And
just as a matter of fact, there have been contests in Parliament in the past. In 1952, G.V. Mavlankar versus Shankar Shantaram on the question of the government sharing the deputy speaker's post, and in 1976, B.R. Bhagat versus Jagannath Rao Joshi, the Congress I versus the Congress O. So it's not entirely unprecedented, but yes, it is true that it's been a long time since that took place. But let me go across to the Congress party and Dr. Ajay Kumar, who joins us as well. Dr. Kumar, again, what was necessarily the problem in accepting Om Birla? Was it a position that the opposition took that, look, we are going to go against whatever it is that the NDA suggests, or is there a principled reason why you oppose Om Birla?
No. When Zafar Saab was speaking, it was amazing to say that, Parliament is consensus. I don't know whether he's totally missed out 2014 to 2024. What was consensus? You suspended 154 plus Lok Sabha members. Where is this consensus and what are you speaking? I'm totally wrapping around my head that, how can a BJP spokesperson come on a TV and say the Parliament is for consensus? Parliament is this. It's a joke, Zafar bhai. I mean, unless you're in a different party, because I can't figure out what are you talking at all. That there has never been a consensus as far as the Bharatiya Janata Party is there. So let's be very clear that you don't believe in consensus. Unfortunately, the BJP never could not reach the majority, and they are now in an NDA government. It's not a Modi government. But the issue is very simple. Whatever be the votes, we are very clear that if you had said, like Mr. Gandhi said and Mr. Kharge said, that we'll support the speaker, if you want a consensus, you assure us the deputy speaker. But you are a party which and at least we definitely believe that we cannot, nobody in the opposition believes that we can trust the Bharatiya Janata Party. Let me complete, sir. My question again is, your 10-year record of continuously harassing through ED and CBI the opposition, your 10-year record on jailing the opposition leaders, your 10-year record on using ED, CBI to get the opposition leaders into your fold. And then you come on this national TV, sir, and you say consensus. It's like the devil preaching the scriptures. Yes. Please don't do this, sir. It is very bad.
All right, Ajay, just 1 second, and I know the BJP wants to respond, but I want to go across to Tausif Ahmed Khan. Mr. Khan, one of the problems today for the India Alliance was the Trinamool Congress saying that they were not consulted on the name of K. Suresh, and therefore if you are talking about a unity within the opposition bloc, it is evidently missing. I don't know if the Trinamool Congress has finally gotten around to accepting the name of Mr. Suresh, but again there appear to be differences despite the unity that you speak about. Could you unmute yourself?
Yes, so as you are aware, Abhishek Banerjee himself pointed out that the decision will be taken by the party leader Mamata Banerjee. And since there was no consultation, the decision to sign was not taken today. This does not mean that the chapter is closed. Chapter is open. You see, today was the opportunity for the Prime Minister, in first time in last 10 years, to actually walk the talk. He talked about building consensus and running the cooperation between the government and opposition. I must interrupt you
because my question was about consensus within the India Alliance. So that is my question to you. Where is that consensus if Mamata Banerjee has still not taken a decision, apparently because she has not been informed?
Absolutely. In order to take a decision, an intimation has to be made. Now,
so what does that say about unity within the India Alliance?
No. This question would be legitimate if you are posing a question about the unity between the alliance. This is not valid now. You see, the decision is not taken yet. It is still open. that the voting is yet to take place. It will take when
The
voting
decision of
takes
the
place.
Trinamool Congress has not been decided. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, the decision to, the voting has not taken place yet. It was a
So,
question of signing today.
Why don't you
which was
just
not
accept
signed.
the fact that less than 24 hours before the voting of a candidate who has been nominated, but as I understand it from all members other than the Trinamool Congress of the India Alliance, you are saying over here that we've still not taken a decision and yet it does not reflect a lack of unity. Of course it shows a lack of unity.
No, it does not, because the decision will be taken by the party supremo.
No, I understand
in
that.
Calcutta,
But
and
is
she's
it not
in Delhi.
strange,
She was
sir,
not
that
in
a decision
Parliament.
has still not been taken?
Yes, he was not in Parliament. The decision has to be taken by Mamata Banerjee, who's the chief minister is in Calcutta. I'm sure today a decision
Does that,
will be
if a
taken, and
chief
tomorrow
minister
you will
being
see
in
in the voting.
Calcutta, make it difficult
No,
for a decision to be
no,
taken on whether or not you support a candidate nominated
that
by
is
the
no
other
reflection.
opposition members?
That is
What
no
difference does it
reflection.
make if she's in Calcutta or anywhere else?
No, so you see, today you are saying whether
Is
this is
the
a
Trinamool
reflection
sending a
of.
signal?
No,
Don't
no,
take
no.
us lightly. That's
No,
what this is
no.
all about.
It could be. I am saying
Right.
whether this means that there is no unity in opposition. That's wrong, because the voting has not taken place. In fact, what happened today in Parliament is a reflection that PM Modi does not enjoy the trust, does not enjoy the confidence of entire House. This was his opportunity in the first
All right,
first
Tausif,
time
half a
last 10
second. Let
years.
me bring in Aarti
Prior
over here
to-
as an independent observer of all of this. Let's just deal with the Trinamool question first. There is every possibility, and Tausif is right in that, to suggest that the TMC will eventually come around to backing Mr. Suresh. That said, if you have a signal today on day 2 of Parliament where they say that, oh look, we weren't consulted, then it's back to that same equation between Mamata Banerjee and the India Alliance, which is sometimes hot and sometimes cold. I mean, what does that say about the alliance?
Well, listen, I think a lot of work needs to be done to make the India Alliance much more cohesive. And, this is a work in progress, Vishnu. And I hope that they are able to, work out a system of coordination and communication. Sometimes you need to do instant communication because there's very little time to take a decision. And, I hope they will work out those channels so that there can be coordination, because it is important for the opposition to show its numbers in Parliament if at all they want to be an effective opposition. And any break in those numbers is obviously going to weaken them and, give the BJP an opportunity to go and say that, well, they are not united, we are united, and, so on and so forth. So, that's something that they have to work on. But, as far as this whole deputy speaker and speaker, fracas is going on, the fact is that it has been convention in the past that the deputy speaker's post is offered to the opposition, and it could have been a package deal. I'm not saying that the deputy speaker's name has to be announced today and the vote has to take place tomorrow along with the speaker. But it could have been conveyed to the opposition that, look, yes, it will be your candidate. It's a package deal. Give us support here and we will, support your candidate. What this really exposes is the trust deficit between the two sides. And this trust deficit has been deepening over the last 10 years. And now seems to have reached a point of no return, particularly because the opposition is so strong. Earlier, it didn't matter because the BJP had a brute majority and could get anything through. But today, the BJP does not have that brute majority. So this trust deficit is something that needs to be worked on, because otherwise we are going to see a very fractious, controversy-ridden parliament, which will not be able to function the way parliament should.
Right.
And the problems have started even before parliament opened.
Yeah, on day 2, on day 1 and day 2.
The deputy, the pro tem speaker.
Sure. I just wanted to go back to Zafar Saab. Zafar Saab, even now, the entire issue of deputy speaker is open. The BJP is not committed. You've explained that. Is there a possibility that the BJP might just say that no, as far as we are concerned, the Deputy Speaker's post must go to the NDA and that there is no question of allowing the India alliance? Is that also a strong possibility?
Well, right now we do not want to comment about Deputy Chairman post because that is not on the table. We will discuss as it comes. But it is when I was talking about consensus, they were talking about condition. I mean, consensus doesn't lead to condition, and that they are putting a condition that we have to first agree to that condition. That is something is not acceptable to NDA, all India partners put together. So we will definitely take this as it comes, as and when the deputy election will come up. That time we'll discuss about it, whether somebody should come up with a consensus, or that time we need to give their demand, or whether what exactly needs to be done. That's something which will be discussed later. Right now, the only thing we wanted them to have a consensus as per the parliamentary tradition and convention, and something they could have done it because they know that they will be defeated. Yet they want to have an election is something which was totally unwarranted, and we strongly object to their approach, and we know that this is not a constructive politics, it is a destructive approach. They should definitely stay away from a destructive approach because they have not. Dr. Ajay was talking about the functioning of parliament in the last few years. I think you must do a back testing and realize that who was the responsible for that parliament was not functioning in the last few years, purely because the opposition bench every time the parliament begins, they start screaming, they start a shell, then they will not.
Okay, Zafar Saab, I take your point. I'm running out of time. So a last comment from Dr. Ajoy Kumar. The fact of the matter, Ajoy, is that you don't have the numbers. The India Alliance doesn't have the numbers. So is this just, in a sense, opposition for the sake of opposition, as far as the Speaker's post is concerned and the election tomorrow?
No, I think, look, there's so many times when you vote, even on a bill, you don't have the numbers, you vote against the bill because the bill is not in the interest of the country. So, you may lose the election or not is not the issue at all. It's where you stand in politics. So that's two different issues. But I just want to, and Aarti has properly reflected, and I'm not, Mr. Modi is never going to have a consensus with the opposition. That's his style. But mark my words, his own allies will be teach him, will be a victim of his non-consensus approach, and will watch 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, when TDP and JDU were so critical for them. Because this is my way or highway types, it's not going to function. And I'm so glad, I'm very happy to see the Prime Minister swarm and move around, very uncomfortable with the opposition numbers. And time will see. We'll see who will have the last laugh, like Zafar keeps saying the numbers.
All right, we'll see what finally happens over there. But Ajoy Kumar and all of you, thank you very much for being with us. We're going to take a short break up. After that, we're going to move to another big story. The Pune teenager who ran over 2 people, resulting in their death, is out after an order of the Bombay High Court. It's resulted in a huge controversy, but the Bombay High Court points out that he was a juvenile, a child, and therefore the rules are very clear. He cannot be kept in custody for as long as he has been. That's up next. A 17-year-old boy who was involved in the Porsche car accident that resulted in 2 techies in Pune last month being killed has been ordered out of custody at an observation home by the Bombay High Court, which says we are bound by the law. The aims and objectives of the Juvenile Justice Act must treat him as any child in conflict with law, despite the seriousness of the crime. On the show tonight, protecting juveniles versus the need for justice in a case as horrific as this. I'm joined on the program by Majid Memon, the senior advocate, Brinda Adige, Dr. Vikram Singh, former Director General of Police, and Dr. Amit Sen, Director at Senior Child and Adolescent Psychiatrist. Thank you all very much for being with us. Majid Memon, just in terms of the law itself, would you agree that interpretation of the Juvenile Justice Act was always going to be difficult? I mean, it's absolutely clear what it says. and this child or this person was under the age of 18, and therefore whatever has taken place so far in terms of his custody was technically illegal.
Well, Vishnu, at the very outset, I want to just clarify a position. You see, the grant of bail by the High Court today has indeed caused a lot of anxiety, pain to the victim and the sympathizers of the victim, including media and activists. They feel that, well, justice is done, that he has been bailed out, although the crime is that serious. The first thing which I wish to convey, particularly to media, because media can educate people, that please understand the law relating to bail. You see, grant of bail or refusal of bail has nothing to do with the ultimate punishment or ultimate acquittal. Now, if somebody has committed a serious crime, and media also very often, tries to say that, well, he has been bailed out, oh, so injustice has been, nothing of that kind. You see, grant of bail or refusal of bail has nothing to do ultimately with the end, the result of the prosecution of the charges. Now, in this case, certainly it has been brought out that the accused is a minor. If the accused is a minor, then the whole scenario changes, whatever may be the offense, howsoever grave the consequences of his act may be, because he is benefited by general law, even Juvenile Justice Act comes into play. And therefore, grant of bail is nothing very surprising to a boy juvenile. And therefore, in this case also, we find that the court has granted bail to him. But I must tell the victims, now please, if victims can hear me, I must tell them that please don't be disheartened. Merely grant of bail is not weakening the case, nor is it a symbol or indication of his getting out of this crime. He may be convicted even if he has been granted bail, because once you must understand that if a person is granted bail, there is no guarantee of his getting ultimate acquittal of the crime. He may have to suffer punishment if the offense
No, but
is established.
Mr. Memon, let me disagree with you somewhat, as I understand it, on the basis of reading what the judge has said this time and also reading the Juvenile Justice Act. In this particular case, right, the court said, amidst the immediate reaction to the accident, the knee-jerk reaction and the public outcry, the child in conflict of the law's age was not considered. That's the bottom line over here. Number two, the court has veered towards rehabilitation. And the law, the Juvenile Justice Act, also speaks about rehabilitation as opposed to conviction with anything more serious. Now, I'm not making a value judgment on whether that is correct or not. I'm just trying to say that for the purposes of this case, the path prescribed by the law is rehabilitation, which is why he's been let out.
No, that's absolutely. See, let me also clarify this particular aspect of the matter. Any observations that are made while granting or refusing bail remain there only. They do not go to the merits of the case. The trial court is in fact invariably expressly warned by the higher courts that you are not going to be affected on as far as merits are concerned by the observations that are made here. These are only provisional observations for the purposes of bail. And they are not the to be served as the merits or demerits of the case. So prosecution must not feel that by any observations that have been made by the High Court while considering bail application would somehow weaken their case or would deter the learned trial court tomorrow.
So in other words, Mr. Memon, the possibility of considering this person, this child who's been involved in this horrific act as an adult, that has not been decided upon, is what you're saying, right?
No, the trial court is at liberty to examine all the aspects of the matter when the trial begins, irrespective of whatever may have been the observation at bail stage.
Okay, all right. Dr. Amit Sen, as somebody who deals with adolescents on a very regular basis, we have a certain law in the country where there is a threshold age of 18. On the basis of the development of a young individual, whether it's maturity, whether it's physical growth of the brain, whether it's exposure, whether it's the ability to take decisions or understand consequences, is there a particular logic in establishing that age of 18?
18 indeed is an arbitrary age. It is a legal age. And oftentimes the development of an adolescent probably takes longer. However, having said that, there are phases in their growth and development where we assume that they will take responsibility, they will take accountability of their actions. And that is a part of growing up and becoming fit to become a responsible citizen of the larger society. So while I understand the limitations of the Juvenile Justice Act, I think what stands out in my mind is the impact of such a judgment or what is happening or what is unfolding on the larger community and how they view it. Because in this case, when we talk about rehabilitation, we are probably referring to the underprivileged young people who often get into such a situation where rehabilitation is justified. Whereas somebody who's coming from a privileged background where they seem to be unaware of responsibility and sometimes do things with impunity, believing that they will get away with anything. And that message is very dangerous for a lot of young people and also for the victims who stand by looking at it helplessly. And the unfairness of it, the injustice on them becomes very deep and profound. So somewhere deep down, I think we need to address it at different levels. And of course, there needs to be accountability. However, whether all the accountability and responsibility should come on this 17-year-old shoulder is a question that I have in my own mind. Because there are many other factors, right? Like, for instance, who gave the keys of a powerful car to a 17-year-old? Who gave the young person the alcohol to be able to drive rashly and cause the death that he did? So indeed, those are the people that need to take a great degree of the responsibility here. And I think in our society, these are the things that we miss out on. These are the blind spots that we have, and we never address it. And, if you go out on the roads, you often see, young people without helmets on two-wheelers, driving posh, very powerful cars rashly after going to a party in the dead of night. And if the police stops them, they will probably have an argument and they will let go with a fine of 1,000 or 2,000 rupees. Now, those are things that actually impact the perception of some of these things that young people grow up with and believe that they can get away with anything.
All right, Dr. Sen, just hold your thought for one moment. I'm going to resume this conversation in the next 2 minutes, but I've got some breaking news coming in. There's been an important meeting which has just taken place now among India bloc members. Rahul Gandhi will be the leader of the opposition. The India bloc has appointed Rahul Gandhi as leader of the opposition. He'll be leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha. This is news which has just come in right now. There's been an important meeting. The meeting, of course, comes a day before an important vote in the Lok Sabha on the appointment of the Speaker, where the opposition has nominated the 8-time MP K. Suresh, deciding to take on the government, despite the fact that the government has the numbers, the NDA has the numbers. Mr. Om Birla has been nominated by the NDA. It's not very often that there is a contest for the post of Speaker, but the opposition this time around have decided to go ahead with that. But the news right now is that Rahul Gandhi will be the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha. That's an important step that's just taken place. We'll try and get NDTV's Sunil Prabhu on the line in the next second or so. Sunil joins us now. Sunil, go ahead. What are the details?
Well, a big decision and a coming of age for Rahul Gandhi after refusing to be a minister in 2004 as well as in 2009 and subsequently being the leader in 2014 or in 2019. Rahul Gandhi, who's been the Congress president, has now finally agreed after a Congress working committee had passed a unanimous resolution that he should become the Congress working committee. So much so that even the Congress president, Mr. Karge, said, I will have to invoke, of course, jokingly, disciplinary action if you don't become the leader of opposition. So finally, he has relented. He was not inclined, but I think the pressure of the Congress party, of his sister, as well as his mother, have now set the stage for Rahul Gandhi to be the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha. What does this mean, Vishnu? It means that he will get cabinet rank status. He will now have to follow certain protocols which will be required for him. It's a backbreaking job from 9:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock to be in Parliament to raise public issues of importance, as well as to keep the government on the mat. He started off today by taking the BJP MPs who were filmed, who were taking video cameras and photography inside the House when he objected to it, and when the Speaker said it was not permitted. So it's definitely a clear sign that Rahul Gandhi had and was sitting in the front bench to really take on the BJP. So that's the strength as we see Rahul Gandhi today being sworn in as a member of Parliament amongst the slogans of Bharat Jodo. It's in the same context now that Rahul Gandhi will be taking what his mother did when she became a member of Parliament,
right,
from Raebareli as well as
Sure.
Bellary, deciding to stay at that time with Raebareli and becoming a leader of opposition and having a series of
Sunil,
meetings
as you
being
point
in
out, a very
Parliament from
important
9 to
decision. India's new leader of the opposition will be Rahul Gandhi. This comes at a crucial time, and we've got an opposition with far more numbers, much more substantive in their numbers in Parliament than in the last couple of elections. Rahul Gandhi takes on an important post. If there's been a criticism of Rahul Gandhi in the past, it has been about consistency in Parliament. This time around, it's not just the Congress party, but managing the entire opposition and bringing about unity amongst the opposition in presenting a cohesive strategy in Parliament that he'll have to work at very, very closely. We'll come back to that story at 10 o'clock in the evening. But I want to return to this discussion on the Pune teenager being released on the orders of the High Court. I just wanted to go across to Dr. Vikram Singh. Sir, the law says, just reading the Juvenile Justice Act, and I quote, "Any person who has completed 18 years of age and is apprehended for committing an offence when he was below the age of 18, then such a person shall, subject to the provisions of this section, be treated as a child during the process of inquiry." If you look at this, sir, it just appears that everything which has taken place thus far, legally was not correct. We may not necessarily agree with it, but the law says something, right?
Vishnuji, let me take you to section 15 of the Juvenile Justice Act, which says that any juvenile between the ages of 16 and 18 can be tried as an adult if, in the opinion of the Juvenile Justice Board, he has the cognitive powers and the mental maturity to weigh the consequences of his action. And to that extent, the person who consumes whiskey worth 49,000 rupees and just pub hopping from one pub to the other, drives without a license, a car without a registration, kills two people, and then look at if there is any case that gets the gold medal for manipulation, it is this case. And the misplaced compassion towards this adolescent, deviant one at that, in conflict of law. I firstly would like to compliment Dr. Amit Sen for taking a principled stand and taking a vision that perhaps reflects the feeling of the entire nation. Now, number two, it is not that I have felt helpless in my life ever. What action has the Pune police taken against the father, the grandfather, and the mother? A serial offenders. They should have been booked under the NSA by now. They did not. They were compliant. They were absolutely supine, and they did not have it in them to give them a message of a lesson of a lifetime. My exception is that they are looking absolutely helpless, trying to serve his master's voice. And in this case, they failed miserably, both in the prosecution and the investigation, and they did not do what was expected of a professional police force and a professional prosecuting agency. They were absolutely serving his master's voice, and therefore I would stop at that. Any person,
sure,
Thana level, would have done that, but they failed us. And
right, and that really does bring me to my next question to Brinda Adige. The fact that there were medical officials, doctors in a hospital who were entirely complicit in this, changing blood samples, ensuring that the blood alcohol report was made inaccurate. The fact that you had a restaurant serving alcohol to these children, the fact that there was a deliberate effort by the father to be away, the mother also allegedly, there is a teenager at one level misguided, horrifically. I think that's clear. But what about the role of his legal guardians? And what about the role of all of those who allowed this crime to actually get away almost, whether it's the medical officials or even perhaps the police? Isn't that what we need to be focusing on as much?
You're absolutely right. That is exactly what we must be focusing on just now. But that does not mean that we must absolve or we should even feel guilty that we are not absolving this 17-year-old of a heinous crime. Now, it's very clear that official complicity has been established. But there are still laws also for the parents to be punished. Why are they out on bail?
Yes.
Why should they be given bail so quickly? I absolutely agree. Bail is every person's right. But if this 17-year-old is going to be out, then the parents must be inside. And why is he going back home? Is it because his family can afford it and they are influential? Because if it was another child from a socio-economic background that is lower than what this boy is, he would not be allowed to go back home. He would be in the observation home. So why is this preferential treatment being given by our departments and by the courts and the juvenile court? So all of this just reeks of influence, power and money. The same law treated and used differently for different people. He should have been in the observation home. Why should this boy be released elsewhere? He is going through whatever he is going through in the observation home. There has to be correction. There has to be psychological evaluation. And all of this must continuously happen. Why is it that he must be released out and go back home to enjoy the comforts when he
Birla, I think those are important questions to which, we need to wait to see where this entire legal process goes. I'm out of time on this discussion. I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. The juvenile in Pune has left the detention home, the observation home. His family has picked him up, this on the orders of the Bombay High Court. We're going to move on. The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will plead guilty to a felony charge in a deal with the United States Justice Department that resolves a long-running legal saga that centered on the publication of a trove of classified documents. We have this report.
Come on, fire.
It's this 2010 footage of a US attack helicopter opening fire on civilians in Baghdad, including two Reuters news staff, that brought Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, into the crosshairs of the US legal system. A freedom of information champion instrumental in the leak of 91,000 secret documents of the US war in Afghanistan, Julian Assange's activism brought home the reality of some of America's most brutal military actions around the world. This included 4 lakh classified military files which chronicle the Iraq War, followed by the release of thousands of US diplomatic cables with candid views of foreign leaders. As America and its closest allies closed in on Assange, WikiLeaks came under intense pressure. In October 2011, Assange told NDTV WikiLeaks could cease to exist.
Over the last 11 months, it is a possibility that the establishment will win. Certainly, it has been difficult for us over the last 11 months to have been removed from 95% of our donations and revenue. We have been surviving on cash reserves the last 11 months. But that's not a situation that can continue. If it does continue, then it is inevitable that sometime during next year, WikiLeaks will completely run out of money, and that will be the end of the organization.
By this time, though, the writing was already on the wall for Assange. For the next 14 years, he would be in a battle to fight for his freedom. Julian Assange is now headed to a court in Saipan, a US Commonwealth island in the Pacific, where he may plead guilty on a single charge and then be released for time already spent behind bars. He then returned home to Australia. US prosecutors say Assange did not want to travel to the continental United States. Vishnu Shom, NDTV. Well, joining us now, Nicholas Nugent, the British journalist and former BBC editor, London. Thanks so very much for being with us. Does news of Assange being released surprise you, particularly since the US had been pushing so hard to extradite him?
Well, of course it surprised me like it surprised everyone because of the way it happened. apparently the result of a deal done last week, but only announced today or possibly last night. But no, I'm not surprised, because there had been hints that the US was reconsidering its position, not least a remark dropped by President Biden that he was looking into it, or he was considering some formula. And I think that gave us all a clue that the US was, I don't want to say bowing to public opinion, because clearly what's been going on are some quite protracted negotiations involving the US, the British and the Australian governments. So I think perhaps the pressure from other governments was more of a factor than public opinion. I'm guessing, of course, but that's how it looks to me. Those three governments have all been closely involved in this.
Just in terms of the conditions in which Assange was kept, a 2 by 3 meter cell, 23 hours a day for years on end in the UK, it almost makes it seem as if Julian Assange was some sort of a murderer. He was in fact a freedom of information campaigner. I mean, that's what he's always been.
You say some sort of a murderer. I thought you were going to say some sort of a martyr, because in a way he could be considered a martyr for the cause of free press. But I think the crucial factor here was that the British government were holding him in those conditions on behalf of the American government. After all, the British government never charged him with anything, and arguably he wouldn't have been guilty of anything if he'd appeared before a British court. But they held him on an extradition warrant from the United States. And I think that was causing a lot of embarrassment to the British government. You know, a total of, I think, rather over 12 years he's been in some sort of custody, but 5 years in Belmarsh, which is a maximum security prison. So I think the British government were enormously frustrated at this, embarrassed at this, but they couldn't say so because they were doing what they were required to do by law. But the Australian government were not quite so constrained, and they did publicly call for his release and return to Australia. So that's why I'm arguing the case that the roles of both those two other governments were crucial in, frankly, getting the Americans to climb down. And we're already seeing that that's a highly political decision in America, with a lot of criticism of President Biden for letting this chap go free. It could even become an election issue in the United States, since the former vice president to President Trump was one of the first to criticize it. So we might hear Mr. Trump talking about it. I think it will be a factor in the American election.
The deal to get him out now and face a judge, on a U.S. island in the Pacific, how exactly does that work?
Well, this is extraordinary, isn't it? Most of us had to look up the North Mariana Islands on a map to know where they were. I happen to be here in Bangkok at the moment, and that, of course, is where his plane has refueled. So right in the middle of the story, in a way. Quite extraordinary that the United States, in doing the deal with him, rather than have him fly through the United States, are giving him a lift, as it were, appearing in the South Pacific, in a court in the South Pacific, on his way home to Australia. So quite extraordinary. And think of the money involved. Not just the cost of the flight, which we understand Mr. Assange is going to have to repay the Australian government, a substantial cost, but the cost of holding him in custody, in judicial custody in Britain for more than 5 years, would be quite substantial. And the cost of the various extradition proceedings, I've lost count. First, it was the Swedish government that wanted to extradite him. And then it was the United States government. And I think he's had at least 3 appearances, not just appearances, but at least 3 judgments on that. And the last one said he should be extradited to the United States, subject to certain conditions. And I think that's what put the ball back in the United States court because they weren't sure they could handle those conditions. I don't know. Again, I'm guessing. We haven't really been told very much about this. But what we can see is that what started off as a judicial process has become a highly political issue involving three governments. And if we look back earlier, of course, there were two other governments, the Swedish government and the Ecuadorian government, where Assange took refuge in their embassy. So a major political issue. And I don't remember a case in my time when ostensibly judicial proceedings between countries, or at least involving extradition, have become so highly politically charged.
Mr. Nugent, what about the sexual abuse charges against Assange in Sweden? Very strong charges. How were they dropped? On what grounds?
Well, that's a mystery. Assange, of course, said they were a put-up job to try to get him to Sweden from where the US would extradite him more easily. That's what he says. We don't know. We simply don't know, because the charges from the Swedish government were brought more than once, I think twice altogether, and then dropped both times after the US intervened and put its own extradition request in. So, you know, there's so much history here and there's so much we don't know. In the meantime, of course, I should have mentioned this earlier, but there's been building this massive campaign in support of Assange for around the slogan of freedom of the press, freedom of the media. So what you really have here, and you've not resolved, is the United States' right to withhold information in the interests of security of the state. And we're referring particularly to information to do with its campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, so quite a long time ago. And against that, the freedom of the press to publish material believed by it to be in the public interest. Now, that's completely unresolved. It's the United States that took the hard line, declaring security was more important than freedom of the press. But as we can see, no other government has supported that. And indeed, several other governments, especially in Latin America, have opposed the United States position. So we've got the United States, until today, excuse me, until today, we had the United States government taking a hard line over its right to withhold information from the public, and a massive press campaign saying, no, freedom of the press and freedom of expression is in the greater public interest. And that campaign has won the open support of several governments. Indeed. So a lot remains to be tried or tested. But of course, in the next few hours, it's all about putting this deal into effect. And the Assange campaign say they won't be sure it's all worked, and the US has been as good as its word until Assange actually arrives back a free man in Australia, probably later tomorrow.
Sure. And finally, sir, does WikiLeaks have a genuine future now?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think there's any doubt. Whether it can repeat the sensation of releasing that massive number of documents from US security documents concerned with defense and activity overseas, well, that's a secondary question, but I don't think WikiLeaks is going to go away. It has a new chairman, one who took over from Julian Assange, and I think it will continue to bang the drum for the free media, and especially against the claimed rights of governments to withhold sensitive information, because it's only the government's word that the information it's withholding is sensitive. Is needed to be withheld in the interests of the safety of the nation. I've been a journalist long enough to have seen this issue come up time and time again, but never quite as dramatically as it did with the release of massive amounts of information in 2010 and the subsequent creation of WikiLeaks to sort of formalize the mechanism whereby such leaks take place. You could say it's a sort of test case for the role of the whistleblower, because in Britain it might have been the leaker who was charged, but here it was the publisher who was charged as well indeed as the leaker. So complicated issues here, but very, very interesting for those of us who work in the media.
Absolutely. Julian Assange presumably out for good after having struck this deal with the United States, but the details of this perhaps we'll never really know about. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you, Mr. Nugent, very much for being with us.